We are really thrilled to close out the panels here today with an amazing set of mayors, and I am the fortunate one who gets to moderate. I'm Mary Ellen Wiederwohl. I'm the president and CEO of Accelerator for America. We work with mayors and economic development leaders across the country. So coming on to stage here with me, we have the incoming president of the National League of Cities, the mayor of Tacoma, Mayor Woodards. Come on up. We're gonna do the boy-girl thing here. One of the younger, but therefore most energetic and entertaining mayors in America, the mayor of Cleveland, Mayor Bibb, come on up. Woo, woo. All right, let's see. I hear that the only figure skating mayor in the country and also incoming president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Mayor Schieve from Reno. Woo. And of course, our chairman of this event, the Honorable Mayor of Augusta, Mayor Davis, come on up. All right, that was fun. Everybody's awake now, right? Got up and stretched. All right, good deal. Got some National League of Cities leadership here in the front row. So I gave you some fun facts about these folks, but before we get rolling, I want to have each of them give a quick intro about themselves. If we read their bios, we would be here till the cows come home because they are such accomplished leaders in our country. But starting here, Mayor Davis, tell us something we don't know about you or your city.
I was not the mayor on Undercover Boss. Just kidding. Mayor Hardie Davis, Augusta, Georgia, home of the Masters Golf Tournament, which most people know, but we've quickly become the cybersecurity capital of the nation.
Mayor Schieve.
Okay, let's see. Well, I decided to run for office because the city wanted to charge me $5,000 to move my sign 2 feet for my business. So I was like, I'm not going to complain about it. I'm going to change it. I'm going to run for office. And that's kind of how I started to get into politics.
I love that. Public service comes from all sources.
My fun fact is, according to LeBron James, I'm the second youngest black mayor in Cleveland history, not the first.
Okay. I'm glad you clarified that.
So Cleveland hosted the NBA All-Star Game this year, last February. And when I met LeBron, I told him, hey, you know, LeBron, I'm Mayor Justin Bibb. I'm the youngest black mayor in Cleveland's history. He's like, no, I'm the youngest black mayor in Cleveland's history. So LeBron
really
beat me on that one.
Didn't want to argue with that, right?
Well, I don't know LeBron, so I don't get to even own that. But what I will say about Tacoma is that we have the second largest, I've been told and understand this to be true, that we have the second largest public-owned park next to Central Park in New York, in Tacoma, Washington.
We've got to go check it out.
Good fun fact.
Well, let's start, Mayor Schieve. You inspired me with your call to public service. So we've been here the last couple of days listening to everybody's smart city journey. And you've done a lot of interesting things in Reno that really run the gamut of technology and tech enable. What's your most proud accomplishment?
Gosh, that's such a good question. Obviously, we're doing an NFT project, which is really cool, and that's to raise money for public art. And you can look it up at citykey.art. Look that up. So it's the space whale from Burning Man. How many of you went to Burning Man this year? Anyone in this room? If you did, I'm going to give you a massive prize. Not one of you guys, huh? Well, we'll have to invite you. Come next year. But I would say when it comes to technology during the pandemic, that I think I'm the most proud of, and I think this really speaks about governments looking outside the box for ways to solve problems, is I think people and their mental health was really suffering really badly, right, in this pandemic, and we were all disconnected. And I was hearing it from a lot of young people in my community about their mental health. Now remember, we couldn't meet in person, none of that, right? So what I did with some of the CARES Act money is I partnered with a company called Talkspace, who Demi Lovato uses, Michael Phelps, I believe, for depression, things like that. So what I did is I bought every single member in my community a subscription to Talkspace. And interesting to learn about the data behind it after we did this pilot, right? We had 5,000 subscribers. Not that that sounds like a lot, but think about it. One person saving someone's life from suicide, or maybe coming home and using, or preventing someone from hitting their child, whatever that looks like, right? But what we found out, the data, 48% of the people that used it had never sought out therapy. So it speaks volumes to how high I think people have felt anxiety, depression, and mental health after effects. So that I would say I'm most proud of.
I think we're going to continue to feel those ripple effects from the last couple of years for a long time, and mayors are dealing with that on the front line. Staying on the people theme, Mayor Woodards, you and I were talking about a very important program in your community that I want to give you a chance to brag about.
Great, thank you. It's so interesting when we think of what is a smart city, and sometimes we just turn to the technology that makes a city smart. But I've loved hearing this during the week, and especially hearing from Hardie that a smart city is a city that doesn't have any homeless, where people aren't struggling, where people are thriving. And so I'm excited about a project that we launched in partnership with Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. Had an opportunity a couple years ago. The former mayor of Stockton, California, gave me a call and said, hey, would love you to join this team. And just so you know, he was the youngest at 26.
He was.
Michael Tubbs was the youngest, but you may be the youngest right now. But Michael Tubbs gave me a call, and I said, sure, I've been watching what you're doing in Stockton, would love to figure out how we could do something like that in Tacoma. So we joined Mayors for Guaranteed Income, and within 6 months, had enough money to launch a pilot in our city without using any of the citizens' tax dollars to pay for the direct payments. We did put some money in for the administrative piece, but the direct payments came from us being able to raise the money from philanthropy and for being a part of the Mayors for Guaranteed Income. So we launched a pilot. We are giving 110 families in Tacoma $500 a month for 12 months. Now, we're recognizing that this is not something that cities alone can take on. We know that cities by no means have the kind of financial support that they need in order to actually fund this permanently, but the goal is to educate and to raise the awareness of what a guaranteed income program can do, and then to continue to push on the federal government. I learned a statistic a couple of weeks ago. 55% of Americans now support guaranteed income. And that's way up from where we were just a couple of years ago. So we have a really big shot. We saw guaranteed income come in different forms during the pandemic. The child tax credit, in those direct payments that were given out to many Americans. So we've seen it work. And the exciting part about it is not just giving people the money, but it's the change that you can make in the lives of those who you're giving the money to. And Hillary, to your point, what we see, as Stockton completed their pilot and got all their data, one of the things that changed the most is the mental health and the joy of people who received it. Can you imagine not having to worry at the end of the month whether or not you're going to have to decide to pay your electric bill or in order to get your child the tutoring that they need? And so that's one of the greatest things we've seen, because when people are in these situations, and what we knew is during the pandemic, 40% of Americans and 40% of the people in my community didn't have, if they had a $400 emergency, it would be catastrophic. 40%, that's a lot of people who are suffering. So in my community, we just focused on ALICE, which is asset limited, income constraint, and employed. So these are the people who are getting up every day, going to work, but still not able to make enough money to support themselves and their family. So we've rolled that out. We're continuing to raise money to continue the pilot, but I'll just tell you one quick story that really resonated with me and made me smile and made me think about how simple $500 can really change the lives of a family. There's a single father with 3 kids. And this single father, coming to dinner at night, kids hated to go to dinner at night because when you sat down on the table, it turned into an argument between dad and his sons, because he had one son who was really struggling in school. So did you get your homework done? Did you do this? Did you do that? He was able with that $500 to get his son a tutor. And so his son's grades went up. So now everybody looks forward to sitting down at the dinner table because they're not arguing about grades or whether or not homework is done. They're spending quality family time together. And while that thing seems simple to so many, it's so difficult to think about where your future is if you can't even figure out how to put one foot in front of the other.
This is a great, great story. And now that family can just argue about politics and religion like every other family. So we've heard a couple of great stats up here. So Mayor Woodards and Mayor Schieve both talked about some statistics, some data from their experience. Mayor Bibb, you've got a lot of experience with data. You're new in office, but I know you're letting the data take you to your answers. Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, so as I was campaigning last year, Cleveland made national headlines for two important troubling data points. First, we're ranked as the poorest big city in America. Secondly, we were ranked at the height of the pandemic in 2020 as the least connected city in the United States in terms of access to high-speed broadband. And so when I took office, we did a couple of things. Number one, through the great investment we got from President Biden through the American Rescue Plan, we put $25 million to create a high-speed broadband initiative in Cleveland right now to connect up to 50,000 residents in our city. And as we know, access to high-speed internet in this day and age is not a luxury. This is a civil and economic right to participate in today's economy. And the next thing we intend to do is to really think about how do we lay fiber in all of our neighborhoods in Cleveland, and particularly those that have been digitally redlined for decades by the utilities in our city. And so we must make these long-term, big, bold bets to position our city to be competitive for the next generation. Secondly, you know, I inherited a mayor that didn't use email. And I'm the city's first millennial mayor, and I had this big, crazy idea of sending a day one letter to all of my 8,000 employees at City Hall when I got sworn in on January 3rd. Guess how long it took me to get my email set up? 5 hours. Wow. 5 hours on my first day in office. So it was a day two letter, not a day one letter. But, you know, in that first week in office, I went to various departments in City Hall, and my city planning department told me, well, we're on Windows 7, but economic development is on Windows 10, and we can't share documents. It's 2022. So immediately, we hired for the first time in our city's history a chief of technology and innovation, and now up to 98% of all of our employees are on Windows 365. That's a big deal in Cleveland. And so this is not only about digital readiness for my residents, but for my employees, so that they can have a truly modern and responsive City Hall to serve all of our residents all across the city.
We've heard a lot in the last 2 days about mayoral leadership. Y'all, you're sure to hear the gamut here that it runs. Well, Mayor Davis, you are coming near the end of your time in office. Looking back in the rearview mirror, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud of the work that we've done to be an inclusive city. From day one, we said we wanted Augusta to be a city of opportunity for everyone, where people would live, learn, work, and to raise their families. We've done that, starting with those individuals who we refer to as re-entry individuals into the community. We immediately went to the city and put policy in place to ban the box so that those who formerly incarcerated would have opportunities to work for and with the city of Augusta. In 2015, we've established a non-discrimination ordinance that really creates a pathway for all Augustans to be recognized, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation. And that's important for us. And so I'm proud of those things, but I'm equally proud of the fact that we were able to restore the city's reserve funds without raising taxes. We balanced the budget every year on time, and we ended each budget year with a surplus. Those are things that I'm proud of. They don't get the headlines, but they create a city that will work for all of its residents for the next generation.
Yeah, some of those things that aren't sexy, but you got to get done. Well, there are a lot of challenges with being mayor, being on mayor's senior staff, where I got to sit for 8.5 years, and we carry battle scars from that, right? Yeah. So it's so true. So let's steer into our weakness orientation here. We're all working on a lot of problems in our cities. Mayor Woodards, let's talk about the challenges. What are the biggest challenges you have today, and how are you thinking about how technology and data can help you solve them?
We are not unlike any other city in America with the challenges that we face. I'm sure if I said affordable housing and I asked how many people have a challenge with affordable housing, I know all of my mayors would probably raise their hands. If we talked about homelessness, that's another issue. And the biggest issue that I think most cities, and especially Tacoma, is facing, that's crime. During the pandemic, our homicides have doubled. We're a city that normally is in the mid-teen level with homicides. We just hit 35 homicides this year. So we hired a new police chief in January. And I would say one of the things that we're doing as we just think about addressing crime in our community is that we're using data and statistics to help drive how we address crime. So we've taken, say, the top 25 most troubled areas in Tacoma, and we're doing spot policing. And the other problem we have, like most cities have, is the hiring of police officers. So it isn't just a problem with crime. We don't even have enough officers to address the needs we have in a city. So you got to be smarter about how you can go out and address, because you don't have the human resources to deploy and just put everyone out on the streets. That just doesn't exist for us right now. So you got to work smarter. So we're using data to tell us where our hot spots are, and we're doing what's called hotspot policing. So we have our police officers who are going out to these areas at the time and day, whether it's a day of the week or every day, but whatever time we see the most increase in crime, and we're deploying our resources to those areas at that time. And I will tell you, we're 90 days in. And the other thing I appreciate about the plan is that we're looking at data every 90 days. And normally in a plan, you're waiting 6 months, 12 months before you switch. We're looking at the data every 90 days and then adjusting our plan for the next 90 days. So we're just coming up on our first 90 days. In about 2 weeks, we'll get a report, see what's working, see what's not working, and then we will in fact adjust. But I will say this preliminary. We do see that crime is actually going down. We're focused on violent crime right now, but we are seeing drops in property crime as well.
Mayor Schieve, I'll hop to you. Your top issues.
I guess I would say, gosh, isn't it a whole gamut of like everything?
You can answer everything.
Yeah.
It can always be all of the above.
It's everything, and it's always moving fast. But I would say, for me, and honestly, I think it's mental health and addiction. I think it's the pandemic that we have not been talking about, quite honestly. I mean, we are treating mental health in our jails and in our emergency rooms. So one of the things that we're doing is we're opening up a 24/7 mental health crisis center and putting wraparound services in that crisis center, but bringing in every single provider, because I think, and I bet other cities have the same problem, is that a lot of these other providers are siloed, right? Because they start to get competitive about the dollars. So they're all sort of doing their own thing over here. But we have, one system that sort of tracks and measures through this HMSI system for mental health, do they have Medicaid and those kinds of things in a system. And so I've said it will all live under one roof. And every single provider in the city, if they want to get HMSI funding or any dollars, they have to be a part of this. So it's actually bringing them all together when it comes to mental health and addiction services. That's the other thing I think cities are really failing when it comes to providing, treatment. Treatment is so expensive. And listen, I would say this, you shouldn't have to have a loved one arrested to get them mental health help. It's ridiculous. So this is the one that bothers me the most, because I think about this. If you don't have your mental health, how do you have economic development? How do you have jobs? How do you have education? Everything. It has to start with our minds have to be well to build our cities, whether it's our infrastructure or our education. So this is like, for me, this one is the one that I just keep pounding, and I feel like the stigma has been so massive that we're not talking about it in the way that we should be. And I want to hear more people, especially at the federal level, talking about this. And especially with children, early and often, we got to get in their schools and teach them how are they going to deal with their mental health.
You know, your comments really hit on what happens to mayors and city halls is that everything comes to the city hall. At the end of the day, if the federal government doesn't fund it and the state government doesn't have a solution for it, it ends up on mayors' doorsteps. What's on your doorstep today that worries you?
Well, I think, you know, as I look at the remaining 120 days, blight has been a critical issue for us in Augusta, and it's been one of my core issues. And so blight and abandoned properties, we had legislation to really attack that, and I can see some transformative change taking place right now. We're still not there. When you look at some 2,500 plus properties across the community. And that's important because I've long said that a man or a woman cannot be what he or she cannot see. And when you've grown up in a community where you got blighted, vacant, and abandoned properties right across the street from your house, and that's all you see, it's left up to us as leaders to do something to resolve those long-standing issues. And so we've been pretty aggressive about that. We've got a funding mechanism that we put in place now in the city of Augusta that will allow us to begin eradicating that in neighborhoods that historically have been underserved and underfunded. The data tells us that that's where you've got the highest unemployment. You've also got the lowest performing schools. You've also got crime at higher levels than you see in other areas of community. And so when that data tells you those things, you have to be intentional about how we resolve that. And so that's what keeps me up sometimes at night because we want to fix that. I want everyone to have that opportunity in Augusta to live a life that they've long believed they could.
Mayor Bibb, when you came into office, I know you had a list of things you wanted to get done, and probably a list that surprised you. Tell us about that second list.
Well, you know, all of my friends and colleagues have mentioned all the issues we're focused on: crime, economic development, opportunity, prosperity, climate change. But I think the biggest thing that I've been struggling with is, you know, we are truly living in the era of cities, as you said. The 20th century was about nation states, you know, freedom fighters versus the Cold War and the Soviet Union. Now it's the pressures that really were up to national leaders are now up to mayors. You see the Supreme Court reverse Roe v. Wade. Mayors have to have an answer. You see the Supreme Court make it harder for the federal government to cut down on carbon emissions. Mayor, we have to have an answer. You see a nation not have a good federal response to a global pandemic. Mayors have to have the answer. And as a newly elected official who had never been in politics before, working in the private sector, it was pretty simple. Manage revenue, manage expenses, drive the stock price to maximize shareholder value. Now it's everything and all of the above. And so the biggest thing I'm learning as a leader is how do I prioritize and how do I have process discipline in managing my team at City Hall to meet the moment. And I think that's the biggest thing I struggle with every single day.
Being in charge of all of this and not having nearly enough money to do anything about it. Cities right now obviously are enjoying a lot of additional revenue from the American Rescue Plan, but that's going to be allocated and encumbered this year. We've got infrastructure money flowing, but that's still a fraction of what's needed. We've met a lot of private sector partners here the last couple of days that want to come together with cities to solve some problems. Mayor Woodards, where do you see the best opportunities in your city to partner with the private sector to really leverage and maximize the public sector?
Well, I don't know if any other cities aren't doing it, but I'll be really honest. COVID has taught us, if it didn't teach us before, and it's something I live and die by, we can't do it alone. Cities do not have the capacity to do it alone. So I live and die by partnerships and collaboration. That's how we get things done in our cities. And I think just what we've seen out here, so many solutions. What I've really enjoyed about being here these last couple of days is that it used to be people just created some kind of program or some kind of data collection, and then they showed it to you and you tried to figure out where it might fit in your organization. What I love is the customization of the types of help that are coming to cities. People are saying, what's your issue? And they're helping you solve your issue in your city. And I think that's important because although we're all mayors and we share some of the same problems, they all look different in our cities. You've got 4 mayors from 4 different cities on 4 different coasts, probably 4 different, or at least 3 different time zones right here. And so while we all may be dealing with crime or with homelessness or with affordability or with the ability to address all the things that are happening, we still look at it a little bit differently. And so actually being able to be somewhere and hear from folks and work with people who have an idea of how to customize what it is they're offering to fit your city is what is incredibly important. And I think that kind of collaboration is how we get the best solutions to deal with any of the issues that have been mentioned up here today.
Mayor Davis, I'll come down here to you. You've sat through a lot of this last couple of days. What are you going home with?
I'm going home with great optimism. I see our private sector partners who are able to help us. I'm really intrigued with what the federal government's now able to do, particularly around P3s with the Office of Global Partnerships with Special Representative McAuliffe. But I'm also encouraged that this generation of leaders that are here following us, nations, cities, states, residents are in good hands.
I agree. Mayor Bibb?
I would say, the federal investment has really been a lifeline for us cities. But for the American Rescue Plan, I would have laid off hundreds of firefighters, EMS workers, teachers in our city. And the biggest thing we're able to do now is really make those big, bold bets to set up our city in a better way long term. And for the private sector, what we're learning is intentional and focused collaboration actually means something. And in Cleveland, one thing we recognized was a lot of our residents, particularly in black and brown neighborhoods in Cleveland, did not trust the city to lead the COVID vaccination effort. So we had this campaign start with our local clergy called Dollars for Doses. And they would give a $100 incentive to get the COVID vaccination. When I got to office, we were at a 46% vaccination rate in Cleveland this past January. Now we're at 56%. So we just said, you trust your pastor, you trust your local community organizer, let's give them the money and let them do the job. And let them get the credit too, because as long as it gets done, that's all I care about. And so putting money where there's trusted partners who know how to get stuff done, I think is the best way for mayors to lead moving forward.
Mayor Schieve, thinking about partnerships you've done or you're going to do, what stands out?
Gosh, it is so true. Your P3s, right? Private and public partnerships. But I would also encourage everyone, there's a lot that government does really badly.
I call that dumb government. We do
Really
dumb
badly.
government stuff.
And so we have to honestly, reach out to your mayors. We love to champion for other people. I think some of our biggest power is to champion for other people and make you the rock stars. And we love to, that's what we can do with this power a lot of times, is open the door for someone else. And I love to hear ideas from people when people email me. I might not even know you, get an email, a cold call sort of email, and I'll read that email and I'm like, that is a great idea. And call them up, hey, let's have coffee. They're like, wow. But I think as mayors, some of the most impactful ways is to use our power to open the door for others. And so that's where it also makes so much sense with these private and public partnerships. But with people every day, if you have great ideas, we want to hear them, because we can't do it all. We have to rely on everyone else's wonderful talents too. So I always say, as a mayor, open the door for others, because you only get a few years to do it. Other than that, they're not picking up your phone call anymore. They don't care who you are. Yeah, if you're out of office, they don't care.
Well, as we close out here, let's do a lightning round. We'll start at the end and work down it. Get ready. So let's get in our virtual DeLorean. Let's go to the future. You can pick your time frame, 1, 5, or 10 years. What do you hope will be different in your city? Mayor Woodards.
I'm going to make it really simply put, but obviously it's not going to be simple to achieve. The city of Tacoma has been called the city of destiny. And in 10 years or further, I hope we get it done in 10 years, I want to believe and know that every person who calls Tacoma home has every opportunity to fulfill their destiny.
You got to follow up on that, Mayor Bibb.
I'm going to wonk out for a little bit if that's okay. But I love reading The Economist. And one year I got jealous that Pittsburgh, and as a Browns fan, I was really mad about this, that Pittsburgh made the cover of The Economist. So in 10 years, Cleveland will be on the cover of The Economist magazine as America's most livable city.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic.
Write it down.
And go Browns, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. Let's see. I guess when I got into office, honestly, so growing up in Reno, people would say, where are you from? And I'd say Lake Tahoe. It was like totally embarrassed to be from Reno. And then we were like Reno 911. And so when I got into office, I was like, you know what? I want to live in a city I'm really proud of. So we've actually done a lot. That was really important for me to rebrand Reno. We now have, Tesla, Amazon, Apple, big companies. We've really changed the dynamic. Come to Reno, I think you'll like what we've done with the place. Totally different dynamic. We're not predominantly gaming anymore, which is really wonderful. So we've changed the perception. We were just voted one of the best small cities in America. Really, really different. But I would say for me is honestly access for all when it comes to mental health and addiction.
Mayor Davis, you've been a wonderful chair for this event. You're going to be a resident of Augusta for a long time. You're going to be a mentor to the next mayor. Take us home.
Last year, Augusta was voted America's most neighborly city. 5 years from now, I'd like to see homelessness eradicated and Augusta being that place beyond the Masters, but the home of opportunity for everyone.
What a beautiful statement that I know we all feel and want for all of the places we call home and all the places we love. Please join me in thanking this amazing panel, and thank you to everyone who made this possible. Let's all be smart.
Thank you.